Hi everyone, my name's Stacey and welcome to Quilt Club with Stacey Lee. This is week 2 and this week we're going to take the squares that we cut last week and we're going to arrange them so that we're happy with them for our quilt top. So it might take a bit of playing around, but we'll get there, and then when we've done that we're going to sew them together. So I've got my stack of fabrics here. You've got 49 9-inch squares. Now I know that you will have a few more because you'll end up with 3 spare, and keep those. You might have also bought extra fabric to play with. What I want you to do is I just want you to put them out 7 in a row and 7 down quite randomly, and then fill it up. And when you've done that, then we get playing to make sure we're happy with all the placements. So I'm just on my lounge floor because this is the best place for me to work. You might prefer to use your bed or your dining table, whatever works for you. So now I'm going to lay 7 across and 7 down, and you might have something in mind. You might already have a pattern in mind. I know that I want to put my more colourful fabrics sort of in between every second one. If you don't have anything in mind, just randomly place them out, and then I'll show you a few little tips on fixing it up and different things to look for to make sure you're happy with the placement. Okay, so I've laid them out roughly, and for me I can see different things screaming out at me that need to be fixed. So can you see how these ones really stand out? And somehow I've managed to put them always together. I've put them together here, I've put them together here, and I've put them together here. Even though I placed them out randomly, somehow they just gravitated towards each other. So I'm just going to mix them up so that they're not glaring out at me. I also find this whole row down here is just too much of the same sort of tone for me. It's just a bit blah. So what I'll do is I will take some of these and pop them over there so I'm getting a more balanced look in my quilt. I do like that these large floral prints are very randomly but evenly spaced out on my quilt. So I'll try not to move those ones. These ones here, I'll try not to move them. I'll move these ones instead. So what I'll do is I'll fix that up and then I'll stop and have another look. Another shuffle. I've decided that I don't mind these two together as long as it's only 2 of them together, so not 2 or 3 or 4 in a row together. But now I can see this pattern here. I don't like that there's a light pink here and a light pink here and the small floral here and small floral here, so I'll change those around. We've still got that diagonal, so it feels like there's too many of the same just in this little piece here. Okay, so I've rearranged all the fabrics and I'm pretty happy with this now. Sometimes it can take a while to get to a point that you're happy with, and if you get stuck or you're getting frustrated, sometimes it helps to take a break and walk away, and even for just 5 minutes, and come back and look at it with fresh eyes. Another thing you can do is take a photo of it and see what it looks like on your camera or your phone. It somehow looks a little bit different that way, and different things can jump out at you. A few things that I do try and avoid. I do try and avoid the same fabrics sitting next to each other, unless of course that's part of my design. Sometimes fabrics can gravitate to the borders, so I do check that I don't have the same fabric that's like only on the borders. I check that I sort of have a good range of depth if it's random like this. So I don't know if you can tell, but these sort of darker orange ones are quite scattered. It kind of helps weight it out evenly. Also, just be careful that there aren't too many of sort of a similar fabric together. So sometimes it does get to the point where you do have to stop playing around with it and you do just have to sew it together. And sometimes I felt a little bit disappointed with my choices and felt like it could have looked nicer. And then once I've sewn it together, it has turned out much nicer than I expected. So if you're getting a bit frustrated and you've been playing around with it for ages and you feel like you're just never going to get it right, I suggest you just stop and sew it all together. One last thing I forgot to say is if you do have a fabric that needs to be up the right way, let's say you've got a fabric here with mountains, just quickly run over all the fabrics and check you've got them all facing in the right direction. Okay, so now you're at the point where you're happy with how you've laid out all your fabric and now it's time to sew. At this point, you can do this how you'd like. I know a lot of people simply just stack the fabrics and sew them and they're fine. But I personally get into a terrible pickle and I get all confused and I sew everything in the wrong order and I don't know what I'm doing. Some people stack the columns and they flip these over and they sew them all in a row together, and that's also a nice, quick, efficient way of doing it. But again, I get terribly confused and I get into a pickle again. So I've come up with my own system, and you can use it or you can do whatever works for you. But what I like to do is I like to label the top row, and I'll get these and I'll put them on every single one and I'll pin them on, and then I know that I'm at the top and that's column 1, column 2, column 3 and so on. So I'll just pin them on. So when you're using pins, please always only take the pin you're going to use. Don't grab a handful and put them down and use them. Just always grab one that you're going to use and use it, because we don't want loose pins lying around. So I'm going to pin that one on. I'm going to pin that one on. And that one on, and so on until I've done all 7 of my columns. Okay, so now all my columns are numbered. I know when I'm sewing them together, I'll sew 1 and 2 together, 2 and 3 together, and so on. So that's nice and straightforward for me. Now we also have to work out how we're going to sew each of these columns together. Like I said before, if you're comfortable with doing this, you could just stack them. But I get into a terrible pickle, so this is what I do. You don't have to do this. But what I do is I fold this one over and I'll just loosely pin it. It doesn't have to be perfect because we will fix it up when we're sewing. So I know that that's how I will sew that piece to that piece. Then I'll bring this one up and I'll pin that one. Again, 1 pin at a time, guys. We don't want to have any loose pins anywhere. Loosely pin that and I'll bring it down and I'll carry on for the whole column. And then when I've done the whole column, I'll just fold it up nicely. And that one's ready to sew. So I'll do that for all the columns, and then I know that I can't muck anything up. They're all pinned exactly how I want to sew them, and I can't mess up the columns because they're all numbered. Okay everyone, so now we're happy with how we've arranged our squares and we've decided the best way for us to sew them together. Let's watch the next video and let's sew them.